Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Cristie TechTalk. It's the third episode we're doing this spring. If you have missed the two previous ones, you can log on to cristianordic.com and look at the recording sessions from those two. But today we're going to talk about cyber resilience and cybersecurity. But first we have to start with some house rules and some guidelines. And everyone in the audience will be muted and anonymous during the whole session because we will record this and we will also send you the link afterwards. If you do have questions, which we hope you do, please don't hesitate to ask them in the Q&A chat windows probably on your right side. Okay, thank you. The agenda for today is we're going to talk about what it is a cyber attack and what's the difference between cybersecurity, cyber resiliency, and data resiliency. We're also going to talk about some real situations, and we're going to have our expert panel to talk about them even more and go deep dive on them. And we will, of course, provide you with some solutions on how to avoid those different type of threats. The one student talking today is me, Johan Tam, and I'm a solution enabler at Cristie Nordic. And with me, I have Kenneth Lenning and Roger Eriksson from IBM, and also my colleague Christian Petersen from Cristie Nordic. So let's begin. What is cyber resilience, data resilience, and cybersecurity? If we look to our very own Wikipedia, you get a lot of text regarding these topics, and I don't want to go through all the text, and you don't have to read them. But we really want to recommend this great video made by a Swedish company, a very famous Swedish company, and you see the link in the bottom of the text there, and you will also get sent to you after this tech talk. So this is cybersecurity, cyber resilience, and data resilience. As I said, there's a lot of takes, and our take is that cybersecurity is to be proactive and prevent cyber attacks on a daily basis and make sure unauthorized people and applications to access your IT environment. Cyber resilience, something has passed your daily cybersecurity defense and the business is in a critical mode and needs to be recovered. Data resilience, something has access to your data that they shouldn't have access to. This is our short take. But that's enough from me. Let's listen to the experts. So what's your view on this matter? Kenneth, you go first, please.
Yeah, and if I were to describe what these words and these comments are about, I would say these are not new things. I believe that we need to, as organizations and people and such, be aware and change the mindset. Because when I talk to customers and partners, I believe they need to be aware of that this is going to happen to them. We need to have that mindset, at least, that it's going to happen sometime. It's not if, it's when. So I think that's the main thing that I would say people change their mindset and start realizing that this is happening. It's not new things, but it's kind of a new way that they are doing it. And of course, it's new words. So that would be my first take on this one. Be aware, it's going to happen to you.
Okay, thank you. Roger.
Yeah, I agree with Kenneth that this is nothing new. I mean, the threats are new, but resilience has been around forever. I mean, the only way to protect yourself against the cyber attacks is the same way as you protect yourself from physical attacks or threats like flooding or fire or these kind of things. So we're going to present some examples later, I think.
Yes, we do. Yeah, and Christian, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with Kenneth and Roger. And interesting is that there has been so many different sort of disaster in the past. As Roger said, in the past was more like physical disasters, where I think in the way back, I remember one day was a fire on one of the largest Swedish banks in a data center, and when they tried to shut down and actually pushing out all the air from data centers, it was one tape inside on top of one of the racks, and basically shooting away the tape and destroy a couple of servers because of that tape, basically. So it's a lot of different disasters in the past that we've been working with, and most of the time, as I said, typical disaster recoveries. But now these days we have more resiliency where we see other threats like ransomware and so on coming on. And this has been a major thing for most of us, I think.
Absolutely. So let's have a look on who's getting attacked. We have presented a slide here just to prove a point, actually. And you see in the brewer course, it's a brewery, a small brewery in the United States. And we also have Madonna, the artist Madonna, actually got attacked. And we have big dragons like Maersk that you all probably have heard of before in British Airways. So anyone is a target, basically. Do you guys agree with me?
But Johan, this is only the discovered attacks.
Of course.
The most scaring ones is the one you never know about. They go in, take your stuff, and go out again without leaving any traces. That also exists.
And I think that the Madonna case there is actually one of they have done attack and actually get away unnoticed, basically. Because if you read that, Madonna tour contract leaked out on dark web. That basically means that they have hacked something, they got the data, they actually, get out. They'll log out and will take and publish that information before the actual company did it. So it's nothing secret on that someone are doing attacks. It's more like, have they already done it?
Yeah, and just a comment, I would also like to say that it seems to me that they are quite good in getting out which one of the companies to attack, and you see that also when the few companies that realizes and actually goes out and say that they have been attacked, how much they should pay. That seems to be not just a random number. They seem to know very much about the companies they are attacking, how much they are able to pay, and so how they are choosing their companies. That's also something that scares me a bit, because as I mentioned earlier, no one is safe. So they seem to be really good in getting the right companies to attack, so to speak.
And I think that the video that you, Johan, mentioned in the earlier slides that we talked about cybersecurity, there's a video from one of the largest Swedish defense producer companies. They have published one on YouTube, and that actually explains very simple where if you just hack you or hacking your company, is that just a small piece of a big puzzle to make sure they get the right information they want to. So that means if they're just hacking you as a company or you as a person, you may be just a small puzzle in the big one, in the big picture, actually, and that's even more scary.
And I think also that describes that it's not just hacking behind the screen of a computer. They are doing multiple ways on getting into the companies.
Yeah, and actually, they don't even have to get in through your firewalls or anything. We had an example of a DDoS attack, which is you're flooding someone's internet lines completely until they can't do anything, and they just send a message to them, say, okay, we are flooding you, pay this much money, and we stop. That has happened here in Sweden. So then they have not hacked anything, basically. They are just attacking anyway.
Yeah.
That company didn't pay. They shut down their internet connection instead.
So we're going to take a look at some more actual cases. And you can start, maybe, Kenneth?
Yeah, I was just going to mention one case that I had with a partner or a customer, or would you say, they were a hosting provider, and they got questions from their customers that were hosting their environment at their site. And they were scared when looking at other colleagues in the business. They were scared about losing their data, and since they didn't have like say physical access to their own environment, they were hosting at another site. So they had demands on their hosting provider that they needed to be sure that no one could tamper with the data, that they need to be sure that they had copies of the data, that whatever happens, they could use. So that was kind of an odd question from the people that own the data to the hosting provider to be sure to do something just to prevent that the data was lost. And the solution that they had, that was only, okay, we can take it out to tape and take it out of the library and just store it somewhere else. And actually that kind of discussion and that kind of demands has been from several customers that I have been talking to, and several times that it has ended in just, okay, for starters, let's take it out on tape so that we can be sure that it's not electronically together with other solutions or systems, so that we can be sure that it's safe.
And I can continue there, Kenneth, because tape, even if tape is slow and maybe is sort of causing other issues, but I think tape is actually really a good start and cheap start to really do something. And I have a similar, not a similar case in that way where the customer asked this, the same sort of questions, or more like, but it ending up in the same result was that was a pop-up customer basically. They basically were afraid of that the internal staff get nuts basically, and they were afraid that people get access into the data centers, and they can, someone gets real upset of something, and they basically smashed everything. So in the same situation that you are, Kenneth, is that they ending up to actually buy another tape library, set it up in a different data center, and just make sure they have a copy of all the data on a different location that no one else has access to, except the backup people, basically. But it then is up the same thing and the same situation where they want to get a true air gap of the data and make sure that was sort of offline and no one can erase that data, basically.
Yeah, and one of my cases I was involved in, it was a customer actually. They had two sites. They had a mirror to a second site, and they got not really attacked, but it's a similar situation. They had a breakdown in their main data center, and they're gonna start up in the second data center, and they needed to go there and start up the stuff, and it will take an hour or something because it was outside the city. And then they discovered that they couldn't get into the data center because they didn't do a proper resiliency planning. They didn't have the access codes to get into the computer center in the middle of the night. What even worse, they didn't have the number to the security company that had the access to the data center. So that took them 6 hours to find out who to call and where to get. So planning for a disaster is very essential, and it gets more and more now with all these ransomware attacks. That's what I want to say. And it's cases comes up again and again and again. And even if you are not attacked by bad people from the internet, and you still need to protect yourself from the normal and standard things that can happen, like flooding, fire, or upgrades goes wrong, or whatever you are doing in your data centers.
And I think that is a good point, Rory, that if you test is the good start. Just test what you already have could be a good start. And as I said, do we actually have the real passcodes for the data center, or do we have the numbers for the security, or have even tried to restore all the data to a different location, or have you tried to fail over to a second data center and so on. So just test is a good start.
Exactly, and you can draw that. I mean, that's of course a balance of how much time you have and how much money you have to do the tests. The most extreme that I've been involved in is a company in Switzerland actually, and they every year they turn off the power on their whole data center and make sure that everything can fail over to the other side in the middle of production, middle of the day on a Friday. And that's the most extreme I've heard. But they have the policy that everyone who put an application in production are also responsible for the failover and the documentation, how to get it up on the other side and this kind of stuff.
And that actually reminds me of sorry, Roy. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. I think that's a very good policy. If you can drive it that far, then you have come a long way actually to be really safe.
And I actually remember one IT manager I met in my career. He was actually middle of the night going back to the data center, pulled out the single connection they had to the internet, so that actually the entire data center was blocked out from the public. And he called everyone inside IT and said that now we have a disaster. You need to go in and to go to our disaster recovery site to restore everything. And what all the employees did first was try to access the data center, but they couldn't because he unplugged everything. And then when everyone left to I think it was SunGard or something like that, they went over to the disaster recovery center. He plugged it in back, so everything was up and running as normal. But because everyone was so focused to restore the actual environment in the DR site, he can actually see if the DR plan was working. And I think that was not a stupid idea. I think it's hard to unplug something because everything is 24/7 these days. But I mean, that is a good idea to really test it. Does our situation work as it looks today? If we got a disaster or a hacker attack now, can we restore all the data?
Yeah, and how much time does it take to get back?
Yeah.
That's the most important.
Also, as you say, Christian, since people tend to have data copies everywhere, and sometimes they have copies everywhere because we have told them to, but they also need to be able to ensure themselves that they can do restores everywhere. Because if you just do a copy and place it on a third site, if you can't do anything with it on the third site, I don't really see the value of having a third site or a second site. You need to be able to do something with it. And of course, test practice.
Test and practice. It's really good. But guys, what about cloud? Does it solve everything? It's the magic cloud up in the sky. No worries, just push send, start.
To be very frank, cloud is just another data center.
Yeah.
It's not really a solution.
No, not really. I can agree that the data center, a cloud is not a solution for everything. And I was listening to another podcast or whatever for a couple of weeks ago, where there was one girl from Microsoft. I think her name on Twitter is Exchange Godness or what it is. She's like an MVP for Microsoft, and she stated out very clearly that Microsoft doesn't take any backup of Microsoft 365, or also called Office 365. But I mean, if you're putting your data in Exchange Online, for example, Microsoft do not back it up that data. They only guarantee the services up and running, and if they get a disaster, that they have a lost copy how they look like, so the service is up and running basically. But if you have any government's information, or if you want to have a legal situation, or if you got stealing data, whatever it is, Microsoft do not back up your data. So it basically means that if you have your data in Microsoft 365, you need to make sure you can back it up on your own. They don't take any responsibility of that data. And I think that was a really clear message from her that even if we have, and I can just rely back to when we had leader of our own mail servers in on-prem, we will never let it be unbacked, will not, let it be unprotected basically. So I think that's the same thing with the cloud, is that when you go to the cloud, make sure you do your own protection on it.
Yeah, or make a perfect contract with your cloud provider so they take care of it, and they have penalties if they don't. So that's another way of doing it.
And you think Microsoft and AWS will sign that?
No, probably not. But there's also smaller cloud providers available, like local Swedish ones or so.
Yeah, but I think you need to think also that it's still your data. The cloud is not the solution. It's just a way to place your data on. And whatever you say, it's still your data. You need to classify your data. And no one else is going to do it for you.
Yes, exactly. So, what you need to classify it if it's important enough to be protected.
Yeah, and I think that we say out that the cloud, sure, you need to back it up, and I think cloud is not a bad thing. I think just cloud is a great complement to your on-prem situation, so that you can put other services, in the cloud to make sure you have a better, less administration, less, updates and so on. And I think that is a good thing, but you need to make sure the data in the cloud is that what you own, and you yourself need to protect it. And one thing you stated out earlier in this slide, Roger, was that the cloud data center is not something magic. It's just another data center. And to just show this one that was actually really interesting is that this is a cloud data center I think it was in France, wasn't it, Roger? I think it was in France. Called OVH Cloud, where it burned down 2 fire zones, was burned down at the same time. And that means that even if we go to a cloud provider, it doesn't matter name, and I'm really sorry this is happening, but even if you go to cloud, you are not protected from real disasters, and to backing up the data is still important, and send it to a different site than you actually have it. So in this case, if they were backing up to, let's say, AWS or Azure, they could actually still restore it. But if they just put like local snapshots into their own data center inside, in this case, one of the fire zones, that basically means they still have lost the data, basically. And I hope this is the last one we see, but I can guarantee this is not the last one we're going to see, basically, because it's probably going to happen again somewhere else. And another thing that we want to state out is basically is that why are people paying for ransomware attacks? And I found out this kind of situation where first it comes out that the length of downtown was an average recovery time 7.3 days. And that took too long for companies to survive. So they actually said that it cost us less money to actually to pay for ransomware attacks than actually restoring data, because it took too long to restore the entire environment. Another situation we saw is that they were not able to restore the data because of the backup system was also a target of the ransomware attack. And we have seen a few cases, actually we see more and more cases coming up where even the backup server had been attacked and take control of the ransomware company. So instead of they just encrypting your production data, they also encrypting your backup server if you use a current operating system, or even logging in and changing all the password for the administrators. So the admins cannot even log in to the backup system anymore. Another interesting statement that in 2019, the mean time to discover that the business has been breached of a ransomware attack was 206 days. That means more than half a year before they actually find out they have been breached of a ransomware attack. And that means if you have a save time of 30 days, that means it doesn't matter how far back you're restoring, you will not restore your data anymore. It's still going to restore the ransomware attack anyway. And the fourth thing we also saw that is that the scope of damage has also been a problem. That means when they're restoring the data from after disaster recovery or after a ransomware attack, they didn't know what kind of data to restore. They said, oh, let's restore the entire server. But they were afraid of that they're actually restoring business critical data, and they couldn't take this risk to actually lose that kind of data because it was whatever financial data or whatever. And this is actually really important that when you're restoring data from a ransomware attack, make sure you can see what the ransomware have been actually encrypted. So you don't need to recover the entire server.
And just to add a comment on that, why people are paying and why organizations are paying. It's something that happened in Gothenburg for a few weeks back. We have a small taxi company in Gothenburg. They weren't attacked, but their provider of the alcoholic lock in the cars were attacked. So that resulted in that no one could actually start the taxi in Gothenburg. And I think there were a few other companies as well that couldn't do anything with their cars. And since they had a provider of that system, I guess that provider was kind of eager to get their system up and working again. So it's your data. It might not be just your systems, but someone else is relying on your system to work, and it could take consequences beyond. So, yeah, just for example, why I think people would be paying, and I guess there are a few others as well that could describe why people are paying, and also you need to realize that the companies you are paying. You don't get a receipt, often not. They are criminals. So are you sure that when you have paid, what do? They give you a way to unlock the encrypted data, but have they removed all the keys in your environment? Have they access to a backdoor? Or I think you need to think again.
Or did they change some numbers in some columns in the database? It would also happen. I mean, it could do anything.
No.
Okay.
But I agree that so when you actually are outsourcing anything, make sure they can restore the data and put pressure into the cloud provider. So if you're using even a local provider like in your country, make sure you're pushing them to actually fulfill your demands, because this is actually really important. If they took, let's say 7 days to restore your virtual machine because they had a ransomware attack, that could be catastrophic both for you and for that cloud provider, basically.
And
again,
we are coming. We are coming back to this old saying that we have been talking about for years. Don't ask for a backup service, ask for a restore service. How much time does it take to restore your data in case of a disaster? That's the restore time is the important stuff. Right, Kenneth? You've been messing this for years.
Yeah.
And also is that putting demands internally into IT and also to your service providers that have they done restore tests. And even if your service provider or cloud provider are say that, yeah, we will, charge extra for that. But I think that will be necessary, because if you have been paying for that services, that could be cost you a few euros or dollars, whatever. I think that could be a really good situation for you to actually get proved, they can restore your data in a sort of time matters. And if that takes too long, make sure you can put some pressure to that. That's not okay from our side. We need to have those systems up and running less than X number of minutes or seconds or whatever you're looking for.
Yeah, I really need more. I think more people should do what you mentioned, Christian. Just go down to the main site and shut everything off and call everyone and say, okay, we have a situation, solve it as a test.
I think so too. So Johan, have you got any questions?
Yes, let me check. Yes, we do. How do you know that you've been attacked? Is there a way to find out?
It's several products around in the market to monitor your entry to from the internet to your environment, and also checking movements of users and how applications behave on different times of the in the week and stuff like that. So one of this is QRadar from IBM. There's several others available as well, but they actually monitor logs and network traffic and see for anomalies, of course. So, and that's one way to find out if you've been attacked.
Yeah, and I think that is also part of the cybersecurity piece of it, that they see that there has been changing patterns or whatever of your traffic. But I also think that from a backup perspective, there's multiple ways to figure out. And I know all the parts we're working with has support of looking at the pattern of the changing track of your backup data. So if that's been changing, where abnormal, you can actually see that and get a warning that your data, your server A has a changing pattern of backup. Take a look on it, and you can put your security division on it to make sure they can look and scan through that server to make sure that is looking correct, if say so. So even the backup software can find out if you have been attacked or not.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. We have solutions, and many of our customers has already paid for them, but there are not that many that are using them, sadly, because it kind of makes your life a bit harder. But then again, you need to make it hard, because if you make it a little bit harder for yourself as an administrator, it's much harder for a hacker, hopefully. So security, I think that's about making it as hard as you can take it, and then hopefully get it too hard for anyone that are not supposed to get in and do stuff. So many times use what you have.
Yeah, I think so too. Any other question you want?
Yes, I got a question here. Does it matter what kind of operating system you're running?
I want to take that first. But so even if I'm a fan of Linux, and most attacks have been on Windows, I say I want to say that use Linux instead of Windows, but that is not the answer on the question. I think it's more an answer that if you have an IT division that only manage and can only handle Windows, and to start installing Linux machines on that could actually create more problems, because of if you don't have the knowledge of Linux, you don't know how to maintain it and how to actually figure out if something had happened. That actually means, open up sort of security hole for you. But of course, if you're using more unfriendly or say so less used operating system on the market, that will be probably better. And if you have a mainframe, you probably should use that, because I don't think many hackers knows how mainframe working, for example. Is that right, Roger?
Yeah, I don't think it's been a hacker attack to a mainframe operating system.
No.
It's not known, at least.
And I'm just kidding. I don't think everyone should start using mainframe, but I mean, if you use more uncommon operating systems, it probably would be easy, less hacker attacks on them, if so.
Yeah, and of course,
even though most of the hacker attacks is on Windows, so if you use something else, you are already better protected or less of a target, so to say.
Okay, but of course, you can get better security when using Windows as well. You just have to think. You just have to do a little more configuration and planning and getting it a little bit harder. Isolate the backup environment, for example. Don't let anyone or everyone have the same admin password. Small things, but I think they do quite a lot, because people are going to get inside of your environment. Even though you have opened one door, don't let them get into every server.
I can agree, and there is a lot of plugins out there that could be really nice. For example, if you're using, I know Veeam is actually one of the, using a lot of Windows, has been hacked and been targeted for many ransomware for a while. Then there is tools out there, like I think it's a product called Blocky for Veeam, for example, that is sort of locking down the Veeam server and so on. But there are other products that's been sort of still simple to use from a backup perspective, that are using immutable file systems and also reducing the access into the machine, so that do all the security for you. And I think that will be also an option, is that start using appliances that are already built in a lot of security into it, so you don't need to maintain the operating system, for example.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. We have a tight schedule today. So we've been talking about problems for a while now. Let's have a look at solutions. But first, before we have to just quickly go through these ones, the problems we've been talking about is management that puts demand that IT should solve business resilience strategies. Cloud solution does not remove the need of backup solutions. Backup software is also part of ransomware attacks, and not only the primary data. And the wrong choice of backward software could lead to you don't know what kind of data you need to recover. And as we've been talking about, it's not when you will be hit by a cyber attack. No, it's not if, it's when you will be hit by cyber attack. Sorry. And recovery time doesn't match the financial buffer of downtime. These are like the bullet points. So the solutions. Let's go into the solutions, Kristen.
So my tips of the summary that you said from a backup perspective is that, first of all, make sure you're looking at an immutable file system, because there's a lot of options out there, and like object storage, for example, you have true air gap like tape, and both of them try to using worm technology. So that basically means that you write once and you can read how many times you want to. So that means if you're coming from a ransomware perspective, you cannot encrypting your data on either object storage or on tape. That means you at least save for that time period to restore that data, even if tape is slow, but I think tape is probably the most secure. But object docking is probably secure enough for you, basically. Another functionality I like is also multi-factor authentication. And that is basically is that there's multiple versions out there on different vendors. For example, from IBM perspective, you cannot delete the data without another admin to approve it. But I know other has like one-time password functionality, so two factors of login identification. So you cannot log in without a cell phone, and that's actually helping you to not so the ransomware company or the unauthorized people cannot log into your backup environment. Another thing I just said was using AI technology to identify patterns, the backup patterns. So make sure that you can identify that something had been happening during the backup. We expecting that you're backing up more data than normally. Take a look on it to make sure you're not attacked by a ransomware attack. I think that is a great functionality that I see more backup software using. And if they have, start using it today, because it's really, really good and a good warning signal to actually make sure you have something. And of course, back up your cloud environment, because cloud is part of the infrastructure, and make sure you're backing up that, because if you just let it be and think that that is cloud, it's been protected by itself, but it doesn't, make sure you're backing up your cloud environment. And not last thing, but I think that do data restores, daily. And that could be single restore test on few files, but once in a while, make sure you do restores of your entire environment. And even if that costs money, that costs hours and planning, but that is so important, because when something happens, you are ready for that. And don't put any doubts to it. You need to plan for that, because if you don't do that, I can guarantee you will be screwed the day something happens, basically.
So that's basically a really good insurance.
Yeah. Sorry.
Comment on that one. So I would really say, if you have a disaster plan and you haven't tested, you only have an idea. You don't know. You need to test. You need to practice.
That goes back to the example with not having access to the second data center where your backups are. If you haven't tested that the phone number still works to the security company to open it, then it's no value.
Yeah. And test it. And you don't need maybe to do everything at the same time, but make sure you test everything once in a while. So you have at least, as I said, do you have access to all the data set? Do you have backup? Can you restore the backups? Do you have machines that can do that? Even if you don't have hardware, then you should plan in to have signed on like a cloud environment, so you can restore your entire IT environment to cloud, for example. Can your backup recovery restore from physical to cloud, or can you restore from your hypervisor to the cloud, or whatever? So make sure you actually do this full restore test once in a while, and restore everything, and with all the dependencies around it. Johan?
Yes, and from a hardware perspective, we've talked a lot of backup perspective. So should everyone really have access to all data centers or servers? And we do not consolidate data centers. Try to expand to more locations instead. Don't accept data center environments that are quick and dirty solutions. By running legacy technology, you make life hard for other divisions. Don't keep only one copy of your data, and last, don't trust anyone.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things you can do which doesn't cost very much, cost some time maybe, but a good place to start is to classify your application servers. Classify which one is the really most important to keep your business going, which one is the first one you need to restore. That's a good start, because you probably have different priorities in the company, but it's for sure 2 or 3 servers that are more important than others. And if you have done the job before and put a list up, this is the first one we're going to do if you have a complete disaster, then you have a good step forward. Second is start thinking about a 3-site solution. They are not so expensive anymore. Of course, if you have your own data centers, it can be expensive, but the third site can be on some cloud provider like Cristie, for example, or someone else. And this technology is getting cheaper all the time. So now most companies, I think, could afford that. And then we are not talking about active data centers. We're talking about a passive data center as a third site, which is maybe a couple of hours behind. And that's also protecting you from a ransomware attack if you discover it in time. You can also think about next time you're buying new storage for your, think about flash technology, because they have been so much cheaper now, and that will keep your let's say rack space and cooling and this kind of stuff down to a minimum, which will save you money to be able to have a higher availability situation as well. Most flash technology today is also possible to encrypt the data with, so that can also be another step forward in the right direction. And they typically don't have performance impact anymore. It was a long time ago. Also, going to containerization is also make it more difficult for hackers to attack you. That will, at least at this point in time, this will probably change in the future, but it is harder to attack a container type of installation of your applications. And again, back up all data. Make sure you have backups on your applications and data you save, even if they are in the cloud, as we have repeated now several times. Any comments, Kenneth?
I actually have a comment before you start, Kenneth. But sure. I mean, I want to just add that flash technology is something that ours, when you look on the, for pricing on flash, you can probably start thinking, oh, that costs too much. But I actually did a calculation of flash, how much hardware is reduced for you. And that means if I think I find out a configuration where we cut down the hardware cost on both physical servers and disk using flash with a third. And if you can reduce cost so much with using flash instead of regular SSDs or actually hard drives, that means you can actually put those money to actually create your first site. And as I said, using a local service provider or cloud as a first site, because that can be your lifesaver to actually have a first site of all your data somehow. And even if you say that is a passive site, that can be really nice. And to achieve that, looking at new technology could help you to go to that situation.
And also, don't just use the flash. Do flash copies. Flash copies might not be as people think about backups. It's not the traditional backup if you do it in the production system, but it can help you to get restores really, really quick. And if you have the right hardware with intelligence, the flash copies don't take that much place. So it's really cheap on doing them. So that will also be something to consider.
Mm. And I also want to add that containerization that you said, Roger, is that put pressure into your application vendor to sort of start containerization their application, because that actually will help you to reduce number of security issues, because containerization making the application sort of immutable, and all the data behind that application will be hidden and not exposed externally. I mean, the only application itself can access that data. And I think containerization is a really, really good step for making your environment more secure.
Yeah, and I can also add on this slide, which is not there actually, but user administration is a very big piece of the puzzle. Be sure to remove employees from the user administration table that has left the company, for example. I mean, this sounds very basic, but you don't believe how much crap it is in the active directories I have seen. So And you should always ask yourself if this person really need to have access to all applications, or is it just a certain? This is a little bit more complicated, but you will have it back in a later stage if you keep that maintaining that.
Yeah, and I can say same thing with backup environments. It's so often I can go to a customer, and I've been I always create my own account every time I go to a customer to make sure I keep in track what I've been doing. So if something happened, they can always point at me if I've done something wrong. But when I come back to the customer, let's say 6 years later, I can still use the same account with the same password. They haven't locked it or removed my old account. And that's so common that there's a lot of leftovers from consultancy people or from, as I said, employees been quitting. And that is so basic, but it's still were extremely useful backdoors have been implemented on so many places actually. So, any more? Do you want to add something, Kenneth?
Just that security is an ongoing process.
Yeah, I agree. Good end statement. Do you want questions?
No. Yeah, we don't have any questions, but I'm sure that you guys have a lot of questions and you think about. So I'm going to give you like 1 minute more just to fire away at the questions at us and the guys.
And here, Johan.
Yeah.
We want to thank you.
Yes, we do. I just wanted to give them the 30 seconds I promised. So if they want to ask any questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Remove all accounts or just disable? That's the question I just got.
It's a good question because first step should be disabling if you think that person coming back in one. But disabling is a good way. But if you know a person has left the company and shouldn't be there, or a consultant has finished with his job, then remove it because it's just crap in there that can just be confusing.
And I think that is actually causing most problems for companies to actually deleting accounts is that they don't know if they are sort of infecting other services that they've been implementing. So disable is a good start. So if you see that an application stopped working, you can at least start enabling that and start working on how to make sure you can delete that account. But disabling is a good start. Start with disabling first, and if you find an impact of your organization, then you can sort of enable it later on.
Yeah, but it's a good practice to never have application running from personal accounts. They should have their own account in your environment.
Yeah, but not everyone is following best practice.
No, I know. Seen that before.
So.
Okay, I think that was the last question for today. So we just want to thank you all for attending. As we've been said before, we're going to send this out to you in a link with the recording afterwards. And we had something special in mind for the last minute here or so, Christian?
Yeah, I think just a comment from me then. I think this has been a really good webinar, and you guys seem to be quite into this with backups and restores and security thinking and all. Is there any place for me at your site?
So, Kenneth, it's now official that you're welcome to always come to Cristie. So, by here, we say that welcome to Cristie, Kenneth.
Thank you.
And we send a contract for a lifetime security expert. But anyway, I want to say welcome, Kenneth, to Cristie as a nice start to ending up as a security software-defined backup expert on IBM, and now start work for Cristie. So welcome to our team.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you guys once again for attending, and thank you, Roger, Kenneth, and Christian.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice day.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.